Story time! So yesterday my friends and I all went to the fair and there were 6 of us in total. And none of us wanted to have to worry about driving there and parking, so we just Ubered instead. So we left the fair around 11:15 and we walked to a nearby shopping center where the Uber picked us up about 10 minutes late. We ended up leaving at 11:30. We get in the Uber, the man says hello, and we head home the normal way. Everything's fine. And my parents don't like when I Uber, so they were tracking me on Life 360 from the moment I got in the car. After about 10 minutes in, I get a text from my mom, and it said, "Where are you?" I look up from my phone and I realize I have no idea where we are, and Ubers know their directions, they know how to take you home. We were 20 minutes out of the way. So I'm terrified. My mom's texting me nonstop, literally about to call the police. I'm gonna run out of time, but posting part 2 today.
This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were 2 young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death. If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. 2 boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
This is why you should never go to a sleepover. In 2013, a kid named Olivia was sleeping over at a friend's house. Olivia and her friend Emma were having a good time, staying up late and watching movies. After a while, they decided it was time to go to sleep, so they called it a night. Emma fell asleep in her bed. Olivia tried to go to sleep in her sleeping bag on the floor, but she couldn't fall asleep because she kept hearing these strange breathing noises. She thought it was just Emma snoring. So Olivia threw a pillow to try and wake Emma up. Emma woke up confused and she said, "What's wrong?" And Olivia said, "I can't go to sleep." And as soon as she said that, Olivia looked underneath Emma's bed and saw something terrifying. There was a man under Emma's bed grinning at Olivia. He put his finger over his lips and tried to shush Olivia. Olivia started screaming in terror.
Do you know someone who idolizes a famous person a little bit too much? For Sophie, her obsession with her favorite celebrity led to something truly terrifying. Sophie loved everything about her favorite celebrity, who for now we'll just call Mindy. She especially loved Mindy's looks. She would buy the same clothes, get the same hairstyle, and buy the same jewelry. She did everything to look exactly like her. So one day, Sophie saw from Mindy's Instagram that she was about to go to this restaurant. So Sophie showed up at that restaurant first and waited until Mindy came. She had wanted to get plastic surgery for a while, and she thought, what better than to get a real-life reference photo for my doctor? Soon, Mindy came in, sat down, and ordered. Sophie tried to compose herself, but when Sophie saw that Mindy got up to go to the bathroom, she followed. Then she pretended to be someone that Mindy met at an event and probably forgot about, so she wouldn't seem like just another fan. Then she leaned in and asked to take a photo together. The next day, she walked into her doctor's office with the reference in hand and said, "Here's exactly what I want to look like," and demanded the face be sewn into hers. This is why you should never go to sleep early. Once there was a girl named Rebecca who shared a bedroom with her sister. But one night something terrifying happened. Something no one can explain. Her sister would always go to sleep early because of work, but one night Rebecca felt exhausted from school, so she decided to sleep early too. She could have never expected the horrifying things this would lead to. When she opened her bedroom door, the lights were already off and her sister was in bed. She asked, "Are you asleep already? I still have to shower." Her sister replied, "Lie down. It's too late, shower in the morning." Rebecca said, "No, but her sister interrupted her. "I said lie down." This time her voice was much angrier. Annoyed, Rebecca went into the bathroom anyways, but found someone was already in there. Then her mom came out of the living room. "Dad's taking a long time in there, huh?" Rebecca said, pointing to the bathroom door. But her mom looked confused. "No, he's in the living room with me watching TV." Rebecca stopped. That's when the bathroom door opened and her sister stepped out. To this day, Rebecca still wonders who was in her bedroom and what would have happened if she had lied down like it told her to.
This is why you should always check your back seat. One night, a woman was driving home late at night from dinner with some of her friends. As she was driving, she noticed a pair of headlights in her rearview mirror approaching the car. As the car pulled closer, she noticed the driver had put on the turn signal, as if it was about to pass, before suddenly swerving back and pulling up dangerously close behind her and started flashing its light. The frightened woman, struggling to keep her eyes on the road, finally turned down an exit. But at every stoplight and turn, the car still followed her, still flashing its lights until she turned onto her driveway. She figured her only hope was to make a dash into her house and call the police. But as she jumped out of the car, so did the driver in the car behind her. And she screamed, "Lock the doors and call 911. When the police had arrived, it was revealed that the man in the car had pulled up behind her and his headlights lit up her car, and he saw a silhouette of a man reaching out about to grab her. Here's another scary story. My boyfriend and I bought a very old house. He was in charge of bringing in all the furniture and I was in charge of wallpaper removal duty. The previous owner had papered every single wall and ceiling in the house. Peeling the wallpaper was oddly satisfying, like peeling skin when you're sunburnt. I started peeling away the wallpaper. I discovered that under a corner in every room there was a name and a date. Curiosity got the better of me, so I googled all the names. I discovered that all of the names were missing people and the dates matched up with the dates they went missing. We immediately notified the police and they sent out a crime scene team. After looking around for a bit, they came up to me and said, "Where's the wallpaper you removed?" It turns out it wasn't wallpaper.
This is why you should always keep a diary. Once there was a young woman in Korea who was blind in one eye. She decided that once she saved up enough, she would get a cornea transplant. Eventually she did, so she scheduled the surgery. She was very excited for it, however, afterwards things took a terrifying turn. She stopped texting and talking to her friends and even her family with no explanation. People thought she just needed some time to recover. However, eventually her parents grew worried about her and went to her house. They knocked on her door, but there was no reply. Then they called the police, who broke down the door. Inside the house, they found the young woman lying in a pool of her own blood. Her parents were devastated. No one could understand why she did this to herself. Perhaps it was just a social isolation. However, this theory was quickly changed when the police kept investigating. All the mirrors had been smashed in the house, as well as all other reflective surfaces. But it wasn't until they found the young woman's diary that they really found out what was happening. When they flipped open her diary, they found that on the last few pages she'd written over and over again, "My right eye is staring at me."
Into the deep end, 'cause I thought I could swim, but we break up every weekend. Was it gonna be like that? Oh, I just wanted you so bad. Playing with my mind, was that your intention? 'Cause I'm missing you.
baby blue 13 times. What happened next cannot be explained. Laura felt a heavy weight in her arms. Then she felt the weight in her arms scratching her. She was terrified and didn't know what to do. She wanted to drop it, but she was afraid of what might happen if she did, so she froze, and the weight grew heavier and heavier. Suddenly, she saw a woman in the bathroom mirror with a twisted look on her face. She screamed in terror. When her friends heard her scream, they tried to open the door, but it was locked. When they finally opened the door, they found Laura on the floor. Her eyes had been scratched out. They tried to move her body, but they couldn't, because something large and invisible was pinning her to the ground. Can you imagine being locked inside your house for your whole life? Caroline's aunt and uncle said she was so ugly that she had to be hidden from the world. If anyone saw her, she'd be taken to the church and burned at the stake. But things are not as they seem. One day, Caroline started asking questions. She wanted to know why the other kids could play outside, but she could only sit and look out from her bedroom window. This made her aunt and uncle very angry. They said, "Can't you see yourself? Don't you understand the sacrifices we've had to make to keep you hidden from the world?" She had been convinced that staying trapped was for her own good, but one day she decided to escape. She used the safety pin to unlock the door and left. However, soon after she made it out, two men wearing uniforms started shouting at her. She began running. When she turned a corner, she saw a group of people who pointed at her and screamed, "Monster!" Eventually, a priest came and said, "Take her to the church." They dragged Caroline to the church, put her on an altar, and set her on fire. As the fire grew, the priest turned to the crowd and said, "Look at this monster. Look at her hands, only 5 fingers. Look at her face, only 2 eyes, and her teeth a sickened..."
This is why you should always keep your phone charged. A girl named Marissa came home from school at around 3 p.m. She walked in the door and told her mom that some random number kept calling her all day. Her mom told her the person may have the wrong number and just to ignore it. Marissa said okay and begins to do her homework. A couple hours later, she receives a phone call from the same number. Marissa answers it this time and says, "Hello?" The man then says, "We finally found you. Don't worry, bunny." Marissa begins to panic and tells her mom what just happened. Her mom's face goes blank and says, "What did the man just call you?" Marissa says, "He called me bunny." Her mom yells and says, "Grab your stuff, we need to leave." Marissa, confused, packs her things and gets into the red car. Her mom begins driving fast and turns on the radio. The radio says, "The baby named Marissa who was kidnapped in the hospital 10 years ago has been found and police are searching for a red car." Marissa looks at the woman and says, "Who are you?" The woman looks back and says, "You can..."
This is why you should always pay attention to details. A woman was brushing her hair when she found a little bump at the back of her head, so she called her husband to have him check it out for her. He said it looks like a button. It's small, round, hairless, and flat at the top. He joked around it with her, asking, "What do you think would happen if I pressed it?" Then he did, and the woman instantly leaned up and gave him a kiss. Then the husband kept pressing it as a joke, but something went wrong. It seemed like he pressed it all too many times, and a cool numbness spread down the woman's neck, around her arms and her legs. Her eyes automatically shut and her vision went black. A while later, the woman woke up and learned that she had fainted. The husband kept apologizing with tears in his eyes as if it was all his fault. Eventually, they both went about their lives and tried to forget about this incident, but the woman just couldn't, because afterwards, she came across a photo of her family in the living room. It was a photo of her and her husband's wedding propped up on a ceramic urn. She looked closer at the photo of her own face. She's smiling as if she's the happiest girl in the world, but there's a small scar under her left eyebrow, a scar that she now didn't have.